In today's episode, we have Pamela who talks to us today about her unassisted home birth that happened in 1993, you guys. So stay tuned for this empowering and beautiful home birth experience today on Unapologetically Woman. Welcome to Unapologetically Woman, the podcast where women come together to share their unfiltered experiences navigating womanhood. Join us as we dive into candid conversations about periods, perimenopause, postpartum bleeding, miscarriages, and more. This is a safe space where we embrace the raw, real, and often unspoken aspects of being a woman. Get ready to be empowered, inspired, and heard. This is Unapologetically Woman. Welcome back, everybody, to Unapologetically Woman. Today, we are here with Pamela, a beautiful mother of 2 adult children. She is also a former nurse and a hypnotherapist based in California. And today, she is going to tell us her very adventurous story about an unassisted home birth that she had in 1993. And that is a big point to make because I remember the 90s and things were definitely different, you guys, than they were now. So let's welcome Pamela to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I am just super excited to talk about this subject and just honored to be a part of your podcast. I'm just so excited. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited too.
Yeah.
Guess, I talk a little bit, with Pamela before the show and understanding a bit of the backstory. So before we get into the unassisted home birth, okay, which you can imagine is quite an adventure, I want Pamela to go into her story about her 2 children, actually. And let's start with your first child, understanding, what age were you, what was the time frame, and society's viewpoint, of your pregnancy, and how was your pregnancy, and if it was a home birth as well.
So my first one, I was a teen and I was 17. And as you can imagine, society didn't look upon that too well. I think that I was part of the statistics that changed some laws for the high schools because I was told to leave school because I would be a bad influence and to come back and I could pick up where I left off after the baby was born. I know now they have programs in place for teen girls who are pregnant in school. And that's probably law, but now that they have to have that. But in 1983, where I lived anyway, they told me to get out. And so I ended up getting the GED. But so I went through my I was lucky enough, I was living at home, of course, and I was under my mother's insurance, because I was her child. I was 18. And so I was able to get regular prenatal care, just like any other woman. I can remember sitting in the waiting room, and it's funny because my stepfather, of course, I'm 18. He was, I don't know, probably in his 50s. He never talked to anybody, and I was like somewhat embarrassed. So I'm sure I sat there like with my head down. I can't imagine how it looked to the people in the waiting room when I think back on it, So that was fun. But but yeah, so that was, just had a regular kind of a experience as far as going to, regular doctor for my prenatal care. And I remember being like somewhat embarrassed as far as going to, just going to a restaurant. I didn't have much social life. I didn't do regular stuff that teens did. I didn't have any prom. I didn't go to graduation. I didn't have, any of that kind of regular, stuff that people do like in senior year. I didn't do any of that stuff. So there's that. But
wow.
Yeah. But the pregnancy was pretty healthy. I did have at one point where I was on bed rest for a little while because my kidneys started to shut down. I wasn't drinking enough, but I had dehydrated a couple times in my life as a child anyway. So that's what was going on. I just wasn't drinking enough water, and we figured it out pretty quickly, and it was okay. But other than that, my pregnancy was pretty healthy.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
great. For one, that your
Yeah.
was healthy.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting that what you were saying about the pregnancy and how you were treated, and I'm just thinking about how you were treated by the educational system. They're just like, oh, you're a bad example and kick you out. And it's like, you kick out a pregnant girl? Like, what kind of crap is that? That is absolutely crazy. And you're right. There are programs now where they do have programs to accommodate,
right,
teenagers who do get pregnant. And people would still, like, now that you brought up that point, people will kind of clap back at that, like, oh, you're condoning, teenagers getting pregnant or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, there's so many factors that go into this that it's like, it's not always just cookie cutter, but it's also not okay to make girls feel ashamed, because they're not the only one that's involved. It took two to make that baby. Like, like, what's happening to this boy? Is he being praised, for, like, what is he be like, oh, you got some big cojones, like, what's happening with him compared to you being shamed? You're like, you're sitting there and, the thing with your dad, they're probably like, yo, did this dude knock up this little
It's so funny to think about now. And I didn't even think about that at the time. I never had a thought that anybody might think that he's the father of this baby. But now to think about it, they probably did, And
even then, like that judgment, that we have, and it was probably more judgment on you than anything, like to the other men, it's like, oh, he's got a young one, like, but like to you, it's like, oh, she probably stole somebody's husband, it's just that shame that comes with it. And this was back, you're saying in the 80s.
Yeah. So I remember, though, I do have to give the doctors some kudos because the doctors treated me very well. And they gave me almost really comforting me, almost really making sure that I was comfortable. Like, even, so not talking about my birth experience, but talking about prenatal care, asking me before touching me, letting me know what they were going to do, the stuff that you hear about now and the stuff that was almost unheard of back then. But it was probably in a protocol somewhere for dealing with somebody, underage, that was pregnant. They probably had a protocol of, handling them with kid gloves, basically,
Yeah. I mean, one, this is your first pregnancy. I mean, when it comes to that, being your first baby, how were you feeling? I mean, did you want to keep the baby? This is what you wanted?
Well, it wasn't planned. So what happened was, I had went to, I had a boyfriend, obviously, and was sexually active and decided that I should get on birth control. And there was a Planned Parenthood clinic in my neighborhood. And me and one of my friends went to go, and we went there. We made an appointment. We went there, and I found out I was pregnant rather than being able to get on birth control.
Oh,
like, too late. Too late.
No way.
Yeah. So I think that, it took me about a month to decide or to think, what am I going to do? And I'm very maternal anyway. I decided that I was going to keep the baby, and I had no idea how my mother would react. And, so I kind of tried to make some plans as far as like my boyfriend at the time, like, what do we do if my mother kicks me out and stuff like that? And he was a family with 6 siblings. a couple of them older, and he had a sister that had some kids, and she was like, well, you guys can move in with me for a little bit if that comes, and we're talking months down the road and whatever. Of course, my mother didn't kick me out and started me going to the doctor and everything, and we didn't stay together very long anyway. So but I started making a plan as to what to do in case my mother was going to kick me, which is so ridiculous to think about now, but at the time I just you hear about things happening like that with teenagers, their family just being like, you're a slut, get out of here, So, but yeah, so what I did is, my mother would go to work early in the morning, before I got up for school. So I wrote her a note and I put it in her purse the night before, so she would read it at work. That's terrible. Then I think about it now. She ended up calling me. And so this is 83. So my son was born in 84, but this, I first found out I was pregnant, it was 83. So she calls me in the morning, and the phone rings. It's not like you have a cell phone where it comes up mom, or mom's work or anything. And I pick it up, probably thinking it's one of my friends that's going to pick me up for school, and it's mom. And she says, I read your note. Everything's going to be okay. We'll talk when I get home. So I was relieved. And so it wasn't until I started showing, I didn't say anything to the school. And it wasn't until I started showing that they, called me in the office and whatever,
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's when that process started, is when you started to show.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember ever, formally informing them or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So that is crazy.
Yeah. And my mother wanted me to go to the doctor to get a pregnancy test. And I'm like, Mom, I already, I felt like it was unnecessary to go get a pregnancy test because I already did that. Like after I went to the Planned Parenthood or whatever it was and had that done, I of course did my own then after that, of course, and then my mom wanted to do it again. And, but,
Oh, wow. So, okay. So you're going through this experience, your first child, you had wonderful doctors, thankfully, that was a good experience. And you had your first baby in the hospital, but your second baby.
Yeah.
When did you get pregnant with your second baby? What age were you and what was the time frame then?
Okay. So I had just got married. And it was 1992, and just got married to my first husband. And he had a son with a previous relationship, and I had my son from a previous relationship. And we decided we were going to have, we had talked beforehand about children, since we already had 2 children in our lives, and we decided we would have 1 or 2, ended up being 1, but we had already decided we would have 1. And we actually had planned to have a baby a little bit later because we had just moved and it wasn't the ideal time, but I ended up getting pregnant. I actually had, I don't know if you remember that birth control that they put in your arm. They put those little it's like 5 or 6 little tubes of something. It was supposed, and it's not around anymore because it didn't work. But they put these things in your arm, and it's supposed to be like a slow release, and it's supposed to last like 5 years or something, or 3 years, and then you get it taken out. It's so weird. I don't remember what it was called. I should have looked that up. but I became pregnant anyway. And they said, well, you might lose the baby because, we don't know what effects this has because this has still been, they took those things out, and I was pregnant. So, but we had just moved. So, and I was in a very, very small town. This town didn't even have a street light. It didn't have, it did have its own hospital. And we actually lived in an apartment that was right next to the hospital. So, that plays into feeling safe about having a home birth, knowing the hospital was literally across the street,
Oh, that's interesting. So you know what we're going to do? We are going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to pick up on Pamela's story, talking about what actually made her decide to have a home birth, especially since the hospital was right next to her. So stay tuned. Welcome to Unapologetically Woman, the podcast where we dive into all things related to women's health, empowerment, and success. I'm Miss Tanya, a dedicated life coach using menstrual cycle synergy to help women executives, women entrepreneurs, and corporations, helping them establish better policies to accommodate women. If you are enjoying today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Share this video with a woman who would benefit from our discussions. We're always looking to grow our community and empower more women. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below sharing the insights you gained from today's episode. And don't forget to like this video to show your support. If you are watching during the premiere, make sure you leave a comment during the premiere below in order to enter into our monthly giveaway where you'll receive live CBD resin gummy, CBD skincare products, a period tracker planner, and a spa certificate. Winners will be tagged and announced. New episodes premiere on YouTube on Wednesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. If you're ready to take the next step towards your own empowerment, book a free 15 life coaching session with me. Visit www.mstanya.com to schedule your session today. For corporations looking to support women's health, I offer consulting services to help implement better policies. Want to be a guest on our show and share your story? Visit our website or find the link in the description to express your interests. Thank you for being part of our community. Subscribe now, click the notification bell, leave a comment, like, share, and join us on this empowering journey. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on Unapologetically Woman. Welcome back, everybody. We are here with the lovely Pamela, who is telling us her journey about, the two different birthing experiences that she'd had with her two children. And we are on her second child. And Pamela has revealed to us that even though there is a hospital right next to where she lives, she ends up having a home birth with her second child. And I want to start, Pamela, what made you decide to have a home birth even though your first hospital experience was not a bad one, it was a good one?
Well, so the first hospital experience was not a good one. It was my prenatal experience going to the doctors for my pregnancy. That was a good experience. When I went to the hospital giving birth was not a good experience. I was actually tied down and treated like a child. They even told me, remember the engine that could, I don't know if you even know,
Yeah. I don't see what that has to do with anything.
Yeah, I think I can remember the red engine, talking to me like I'm 5 and I'm giving birth. And, and then when I went to reach down because I could feel my baby coming out, they literally belted my hands to the side of the bed. And then when the baby was born and they put him on my chest like they do, or they put him up on my belly, actually, they put him up, and then I couldn't, my hands were still tied, and somebody said something about, well, touch your baby, that's your baby, acting like I didn't care. And then it was like something like, on my chart, like failure to bond, or something. It's like, don't you realize you guys tied me down? I mean, it was horrific, So I just wanted to get home with my baby, and I was in the hospital for like 3 days, and everything was fine. But so I had, what was considered a natural, normal birth. There was no, epidural. There was no, just everything was, I didn't have any medication. It happened really quickly. And so they considered that a natural birth. And to me, it felt like the most unnatural thing that could have happened. Like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. So as soon after that birth, so there was 9 years between my children. After that birth, I started going, no internet. I started going to the library, searching, natural birth, and came across midwifery, came across home birth, and, was surprised to find out that people still did this, So, yeah.
Oh, wow. So it was not a good experience. I take that back.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Insane. No, that was my fault, because you were right. You did say it was the prenatal experience that was good. You did not say it was the hospital. So that would definitely explain. And it's funny when you mentioned going to the hospital, because I'm 38 and I remember growing up without cell phones. I remember that, like, if somebody tried to get in contact with you, it was like at your landline at home. And
it just rings. And
it just rings. Yeah. And I remember, doing research at the library. Library was like one of my most favorite places to go, and learning how to understand the codes of what you're looking for and identify where the books are. And it makes me wonder if, even though I'm young and I remember these things, and I wonder how many, like, our generation that comes after us, I'm like, well, they're born with a cell phone, so they don't get that experience of not understanding what it's like to not have electronics. But it's like, do they value the library like as much as like we did, for that research? Like, do they value it as much as we did growing up? So that
no Google, you know what I mean? You can get the latest statistics right now at any moment. Then you'd have to go to the library, and every time you went there, there's nothing that's going to be the latest. Any research you did was written how long ago,
Exactly. And then, also at the same time, these books that are holding this history and this knowledge that we end up building on in the future, is also good to know. And also good to know to see if, like, it's already been done and they're just presenting the same package with a different cover, know, and it's like, okay, all right, now
this sounds familiar.
Right. So I was like, okay, what? And I feel like back then you had to be more credible,
absolutely.
with the internet and people just being able to just put up a homepage at any point. I mean, within seconds. It's the library, I feel, is still an essential source. I'm part of, like, the New York library here to try to keep the libraries open, like, because that's a very detrimental thing, I feel, to close down libraries.
Absolutely.
And now, going into that, I'm kind of being nostalgic here. This is in the 90s. And you decided, okay, I've done this research about the home birth. I know, I've heard about, water births, and women who do that. How did you decide, like, how was the planning for the home birth for you?
So I did not have a water birth. So the planning was, we had just moved, I was pregnant. So I started looking for a midwife as soon as we had moved. And I think I was 6 months pregnant and I hadn't found one yet. So I had went to a regular doctor, had the first prenatal test and everything was looking good. And then I had found a midwife, which was like about an hour away. So I had started going to prenatal checks with her. She agreed to see us and agreed to our home birth, but she had somebody else that was a little bit closer, that was an older midwife. She was no longer practicing, but she agreed to be like a backup, because she was closer to us. So I started going to prenatal checks with the one that was like an hour away. And I had a ton so she gave me reading material. I had a ton of like VHS tapes and to watch of, documentaries on home birth. I just watched a million women giving birth in a million different ways, naturally at home and in the hospital. And I felt really confident. I mean, I felt really, I was a little bit, I'm going to say, blissfully unaware of, the possible complications. I mean, after that, and becoming a nurse, before that, I had apprenticed with a midwife for a while before becoming a nurse myself. And so now I know more of the possibilities. But at that time, I was just like, this is going to be easy peasy. And it was, luckily. But we also had called the hospital. The midwife wants you to have like a, to make the hospital aware that there's going to be a home birth, and there's a possibility, everything's fine, there's been no complications during the pregnancy, but just to have like a heads up kind of a thing,
Yeah, that makes sense, because even the OBGYNs, they will make sure the hospital is aware, hey, I have a patient that could possibly be coming in the next, because if they come through the ER, they already know, contact this doctor. Yeah. So that makes perfect sense. So now we're about to get to the juicy part. So you got this all planned out. Now we're getting to the point where you're about to give birth now. Yeah. So what happens this particular day?
So my water had broke in the middle of the night. And so she was 9 days late. I was 9 days past my expected due date, is the way I should actually word that. And so I just started, I tried to go back to sleep. Of course you couldn't, and the contractions got stronger after that. So I started just walking around, I ate some snacks a little bit, and started, sat up reading and stuff. My mother was there. She had come up from Missouri. We were up in Upper Michigan. She had come from Missouri I had my son, and she had come up to sort of help with the birth or help with my son or whatever was needed. And it wasn't feeling like I was about to give birth when my husband got up for work. I wasn't feeling like it was that close. So he went to work. He wasn't that far away. He was like, 10, 15 minutes away. And, like I said, my mom was there. So he went to work, and I labored, all morning. And then about 10 after 10, they were really strong. I could feel a lot of pressure. And so my mom had called. So we'd been calling the midwife for a while, just letting her know updates. And so about 10 after 10, I could feel a lot of pressure. And so I had a birthing stool, which is like 12 inches off the ground, and like a U shape, and like with 4 legs and a U shape, so you could sit on it and squat, like a supported squat kind of a thing. And so we had like not necessarily a tarp, but I think it was like a shower curtain, So we had that down on the floor, had the squatting thing, stool on top of that. And so I went over there, and just stood squatting, back and forth. And then my husband walked in the door, and I started belting out orders, wash up, the baby's coming, wash your hands, over there is this, over here is this, because I had everything ready. Like I had a fresh baby pack ready, everything at the ready. And so I was almost like my own midwife, because the midwife hadn't made it yet. And I was like, do this, do this, do this. And my mom is, we had like an emergency book for like, in case the midwife didn't make it. My mom's just like frantically flipping through that, not saying a word, looking panicked. And so then my husband does all that I told him to do. And then he comes over, and I sit down, baby's born pretty much, pretty quickly. And he wipes her off. And as soon as she's out, my mother yells the time. And we were both like, it was 11:04. And he gives her to me, wrapped in a blanket. She starts nursing right away. And she was huge. She was 8 pounds and 6 ounces. And my son was only 6 pounds. So she looked to me like a month old already. And she was hungry, So so she started nursing right away. My husband, cleaned up as much as he could in that. And then it was about 20 minutes later, the midwife came in. And so then she helps me to get the placenta out. The placenta had not come out yet, the afterbirth. And so I have to say before, I have to make sure I say this. So my daughter, who is now 30, sent me a meme that says, so there's a meme that said, who has a popcorn bowl that's also the throw up bowl? And so my daughter says, or, the afterbirth bowl. Because we used our big bowl that you use for vomit or popcorn or placenta, we use that same big bowl. So, yeah, great stuff. So that's that. And then my midwife, made a nice warm herbal bath for me. The baby and I got to take our first bath together in these herbs that are healing and calming. And then my son came home from school, and I made him shower before he even looked at the baby. And so yeah.
Oh wow.
It was awesome. It was so much better. And so my main thing is, I wanted people to, at that time, my big thing was I wanted people to know their options. It wasn't that I was so much, that hospital birth is bad and home birth is good. Now people have the internet and people can choose, to be informed or not. You choose whether you want to be informed. But at that time, people are just, at the mercy of, their doctors or their mothers or their friends, so that was my big thing at the time. I was kind of a little bit of a, up on my soapbox telling everybody, but now it's more of, people can choose to be informed or not. But at that time, I just want people to know all their choices and all their, to be informed when they make their choices and to know all their options.
I think that's beautiful because oftentimes, when people, especially generations before us, they only know one way, and that was the way they've been taught. Mm-hmm. So with every generation, I feel like multiple ways come out to do the very same thing that you were doing. But if you're stuck here, you not intentionally, I don't think people do this intentionally, but you might shame a different way somebody goes about something because you don't understand, you don't understand that, I can make $1,000 a week on my phone in my hand. And that's something hard for someone in the older to understand and comprehend that I can actually do this now. So if someone from that generation were to try to teach me how to make money now, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And and I'm like, dude, why would I do a 9 to 5 when I don't have to do a 9 to 5? Why would I choose that? But to them, that's how you survive. That's the only way to survive.
Absolutely.
And I love that. I love having the different options, and I love for you that it was a beautiful experience. That home birth was a beautiful experience, and you didn't allow that first experience to hinder you. Yeah. Because that could have easily happened. What you told me, that was absolutely ridiculous. It was the strapping down of the hands, that's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. But you're not the first one to tell me that. Yeah. And she was a grown-ass woman. Yeah. And they had her strapped down. Wow. She ended up actually coding on that birthing table. Oh my gosh. Yeah. She was actually on the show. If you can take a look at it, her name is Laura. It's about her death experience on the birthing
Oh, okay.
table.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, in the hospital, not downplaying any hospitals, you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not, okay.
Right.
I'm not doing that at all. My mom worked in the hospital.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's just that we do, as women, need to take more charge of our bodies and
Right.
how we want this birth to happen, because it's only happening to us.
Yeah.
It's only happening to us and the baby. Like, the reality. And it's just,
Yeah.
when it comes to pregnancy, I think this is also something that we don't speak a lot about as women, is that it can go either way. Either you could lose your life or you could lose the baby. You know, it's
but also not to fall into that fear, to know that so many women have just a perfect, natural, normal birth just as easily as a cow does, you know?
Yes. And that is a good point.
Or the puppies do, you know? How many mammals around the world are giving birth every day totally naturally without any assistance and doing perfect jobs? How many ancestors of yours, you know, have had to come across giving birth before to make you in this world? So, you know, it's you know, it's both. So
and your story, you know, it would be nice to hear more stories of these natural births that happen, you know, without all of the medicinal assistance, you know, and hearing about, you know, her making that bath for you. I thought that was really sweet. I was like, oh, wow, that's so caring and loving. Like, I just love that whole process, like, for you. Like, that's absolutely beautiful. And I love how you brought that up, you know, that women, you can have a natural birth without it being what we see on ththese videos, without it being excruciating, and for you to have a beautiful connecting experience with your baby.
And we used olive oil, you know, as the baby was crowning, to help the baby, you know, slip out a little bit easier. And when the midwife came, she had some natural herbs, you know, to put around me in that area to sort of, you know, I don't want to say numbing, but, you know, soothing herbs and stuff to help, to just, you know, calming herbs and that. You know, I can't think of what they are now, but I think it's calendula, maybe, you know, whatever. But I used to know more about herbs, but anyway, but, you know, it wasn't just completely, you know, so we use more natural things. And during the whole prenatal process, we learned of all this stuff. And she gave us a birthing kit, like, you know, in the last trimester to have at home in case something like that happened, you know. And it was all wrapped up like sterile, in a sterile case and everything. That's one of the things I had yelled at my husband where it was and to go get it, you know.
Yes, and I also, that point too, you, like, you're about to give birth and you are taking charge. Like, you're like, like, you are delegating, like, and I'm just like, yo, that is so much power.
It was empowering. And if you knew me back then, I was a different woman. I was very, you know, I was not very confident. I was not, I didn't speak up for myself. I was not the woman I am today. And I know you don't know me very well, but you know, that was very empowering. And it was a very good time for me to be able to speak up and just, you know, take charge. You know, it was a good time for me to do that. So the whole experience was so much more than bringing my daughter into the world.
Wow, that is absolutely beautiful. I really admire this aspect of your story. And I wish we have that experience as far as what we're exposed to as young girls before we go into young womanhood. I wish we do see more of the different options and the different experiences that women have when it comes to pregnancy. And I think that would, because, like, for me, I was like 6th grade, I was like, no, like, I already decided I was not having children. Like, I was so, like, you know, excuse my language, but I was dead ass. You know, not happening, you know, and I have no regrets. for that whatsoever. I'm 38 and I'm still like, no, not gonna happen. I do want to adopt when I do get to a certain financial level. Absolutely want to adopt, but it was because of that birthing video that I saw actually at the hospital that I was like, why would I put my vagina through that? Like, that's all I was thinking about.
I think that when you get that sex ed in 6th grade or whatever it is, when they give you that, when they show a hospital birth, I think that whole program is funded by the hospital or by some doctors or by some medical community. So you don't really you might have a sentence. Maybe there's probably not about other options, but you have to follow the money. Who's funding what you're being shown? Who's funding? Who's teaching whatever to your children, or even in college? Where is this information coming from? That's why you have to do your own research too.
That's a very good point, because it actually happened at the hospital, like where they showed us the video. So that makes perfect sense why they would only show us a hospital birth.
Yeah, they want you guys to go there. Yeah,
they want us to go there to Halifax Hospital to have your baby.
It was basically a big commercial.
Like, that's a good point.
Yeah. And they wanted you guys to be prepared.
The commercial failed because I'm like, nope, that's not happening.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pamela, for sharing your beautiful birthing experience.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for the opportunity to share my experience. Yeah, thank you.
That's just like fascinating. And oh man, the adventures, like the stories that you're able to tell. I feel like that's part of our journey, right? Being able to have these stories to pass on, being able to be like, I mean, come on, Pamela, you could be like, look, I assisted my own birth. Like, think about that. Like, how powerful are you? Like, you're like, because I mean, I did see somewhere where there were a lot of bones that are crushed in order for the baby to be born. Like,
the skull bones kind of, overlap like this a little bit. They're really not fused together, for a while. So where there are, lines between the skull, they do sort of can overlap, and that's why they have like a cone head too sometimes when they come out. So and then the shoulders and the your collarbones, everything kind of they're not necessarily crushed, but they're softer and they move a little bit. So
that's just interesting. I mean, come on, you are a warrior queen goddess. Like, who? Like, I'm just like, I've never heard of like a woman is giving birth and she's like, pop out, baby. All right, hey son, wash your hands. Meet your little sister.
I know it was like, well, nobody else was doing it. My mother was almost in panic mode, flipping through this book, like, I
have one last thing to say. So when you're talking about your mother being in panic mode, my little sister told me this, because my little sister has, a little nephew, my little nephew, her son. And she said that, my mom was driving her to the hospital and my mom was like freaking out so much that she kept hitting the brakes.
Oh, no. Oh, gosh.
Of course, my little sister is not laughing at that time,
right,
but
no
like,
way.
When she's telling me the story, like later on, she was like, yeah, girl. She was like, she just kept panicking and hitting the brakes, like, because she was shaking, and I'm like, oh crap. Like, I can only imagine like your mom, like, looking through this book, panicking and not saying anything because she doesn't know what to say.
And here I'm like squatting, standing, like the baby's coming, What does the book say to do right now?
You're like trying to consult a book and your body is like, don't worry, I got all this. Don't worry. Like I got you. But I think this is the first beautiful birthing story I've heard.
Oh.
To be honest with you, that didn't involve like medicine. And when I say medicine, I mean artificial medicine. I don't mean like, when it comes to like the herbs, because I've heard of so many doulas that use herbs.
Right.
And I'm like, I feel like a lot of them are herbalists.
Yes, absolutely. And I was kind of going in that direction myself. And like I said, I used to know a lot more, and it didn't come to me when I was thinking of it. So it's fading away. But I used to know a lot more. Yeah.
Wow, this is so empowering, because I think this is I did have a woman come on to talk about Mayan abdominal massage, and she talked about the three.
So awesome.
Yeah, she was talking about steam baths. That's what made her bring up about the herbs and how good it is for like our vaginal area to do steam baths. And like when you mentioned the herbal bath, I'm like, oh man, I really need to invest in the knowledge of herbs, because this is very healing.
Yeah, and there are women, and I don't know if she had brought it up, but women who are past their due date will do those herbal steam baths in that area to help bring on labor.
That's good to know. Wow, there's so much, that would be cool to have like an herbalist come on that's specifically for, women's health. That would be really awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. And a lot of midwives and doulas, also definitely, work with women in that way. They're not just, there are some that are not just for pregnancy and birth, but just overall women's health. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It is, absolutely.
Before we say goodbye to Pamela, is there anything either you would like to say to the women out here who are listening, or even to the young girls who have yet to experience the different aspects of womanhood, and if you would like to promote anything that you are doing that we can support you?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, just make informed decisions, and what is right for your sister or your mother or your friend may not be right for you. Make informed decisions, when it comes to your own health in every way. And don't follow whatever the trend is either. If everybody's having a water birth right now, if you have a home birth, you don't need to have a water birth if it doesn't appeal to you or if it worries you in any way. If everybody's getting an epidural right now, I'm going to plan my epidural, regardless. It doesn't mean that's right for you. Just do your own research. Also, what feels right for you, check within. I think that's really important. If it doesn't really sit right within you, how it feels for your heart and soul, pay attention to that too. So I think that's really important. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story. I also have 2 books that share my story more, and you can find them on Amazon. Just put my name in the Amazon search. And I have my whole life story. It's I didn't come this far to only come this far. And of course, there's a section on my home birth.
Oh, wow. I love the title of your book, though. Yeah. Like, I didn't come this far to only go this far. Like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
That is amazing. So, guys, don't worry. We're going to have all her links to her books and what she is doing down in the description. So if you are listening to this through iTunes, go ahead and look at the podcast description. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and grab that down below, because that sounds empowering already. I didn't come this far to be this far. Like, yes, Pamela, the goddess is here. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. My honor.
Thanks for joining us today. Learn more about our guests in the description below. Download your free period tracker to stay in tune with your energy levels, mood, cravings, and your flow. Interested in being a guest on our show? Complete the form in the description. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts on today's episode and be entered into our surprise monthly giveaway. For women looking for a natural way to relieve menstrual cramps, try live resin gummies to ease menstrual cramps. The link is available in the description. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more empowering content. This is Unapologetically Woman.